usually started in the dark, 5:30, or maybe 6 in the morning. The sound of the alarm wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. Feet hit the cold floor before minds were fully awake. It was a reflex, simple muscle memory. Men and women moved through the morning in a haze. The coffee was boiling hot, consumed standing up. The keys were grabbed from the counter. The door clicked shut. And then, the commute began. The drive was always the same stretch of highway. The same billboards fading slowly over the decades. The same radio stations filling the silence between thoughts. There was no contemplation about wanting to go. The concept of want was irrelevant. It wasn't part of the vocabulary. They went simply because they had to. They went because it was Monday, and then it was Tuesday. And suddenly, it was Friday. Then a blink, and it was Monday again. They walked into those buildings, factories, offices, warehouses, and the performance began. The mask went on, the face that signaled reliability. Even when the body was tired, even when the mind was bored, they clocked in. And the other version of the person, the one who enjoyed painting or fixing engines or walking in the woods, was left outside in the parking lot, waiting for 5 o'clock. Looking back, the compliance seems absolute, but the context explains it. There was a quiet agreement in that generation, a specific definition of what constituted a good life. To be a responsible adult meant stability. It meant a steady paycheck. It meant benefits. It meant a pension. Passion was considered a luxury, something for the wealthy or the very young. Work was not about self-expression. Work was about survival. If a job paid the bills, complaints were swallowed. People held onto positions with a tight grip. To leave a secure job because of a lack of fulfillment was not seen as brave. It was seen as reckless, almost selfish. Risking the mortgage was unthinkable. Risking the future was forbidden, so they stayed. They traded time for safety. Society taught that the greatest virtue was endurance. Keep the head down, do the work, maintain the status quo. There was a belief that the sacrifice was noble, and in many ways it was. There is honor in feeding a family. There is honor in keeping the lights on. But the price tag attached to that honor was rarely discussed. The slow subtraction of the self, day by day, dollar by dollar, was simply the accepted cost of doing business. The middle years tend to blur together. That long stretch between 30 and 50 often vanishes in memory. Routine has a way of erasing time. When every day looks the same, the brain stops recording new memories. The major events remain: a wedding, a funeral, a graduation. But the Tuesdays, the Wednesdays, thousands of them, simply gone. It started with energy. The plan was often to work for a while, save money, and then pursue something else. But the while turned into 5 years, then 10, then 20. The golden handcuffs tightened. Promotions arrived. A little more money came in, but with it came more stress, less time. A nicer car was bought to drive to the job that was merely tolerated. A bigger house was bought to sleep in between shifts. Slowly, the hobbies died out. Guitars collected dust in corners. Manuscripts were left in drawers. Fishing rods stayed in the garage. The intention was always to return to them this weekend. But the weekend was for maintenance. The weekend was for recovery. It was for gathering just enough strength to repeat the cycle on Monday. Fatigue became a permanent resident in the home. Not a sharp pain, just a dull weight, a heaviness in the shoulders, a fog in the mind. Dreaming about the future stopped. Surviving the week became the only goal. Sunday nights carried a specific atmosphere. Anyone who lived this routine recognizes the feeling. That shift in the air around 4 p.m. The sun was still out. The family was home. but the stomach would tie itself into a knot. The shadow of the week ahead was already falling over the house. People were physically present in their living rooms, but mentally they were already at the desk. They were already anticipating the problems, the difficult supervisor, the quotas, the noise. Guilt often followed. Guilt for wishing time away. Looking at the calendar and hoping for Friday meant wishing for 5 days of life to vanish. The math was harsh, wishing for 70% of life to be over, just to enjoy the remaining 30%. It was a terrible trade. But it was the trade everyone made, week after week, year after year. The justification was always the family. It is for them. And it was true. The love was real, but over time became normal. True presence became rare. The provider was there, but the person was often exhausted. The check cleared. The light stayed on. But the energy to engage, to play, to listen, that was often left at the office. And then, eventually, it stops. The retirement party occurs. A cake, a handshake, maybe a small gift. And the walk to the parking lot happens for the last time. The silence that follows is significant. The first few weeks feel like a vacation. But then, the reality settles in. The face in the mirror is older. The energy saved for someday is no longer available. The knees ache. The patience is thinner. Time is abundant now. But time is not just hours on a clock. Time is energy. Time is health. And the prime years were given to entities that replaced the worker within 2 weeks. There is pride. There is a massive, sturdy pride in having finished the race. They didn't quit. They provided. They were responsible. That matters. But there is also a quiet observation. The ghost of the person who might have existed, the musician, the traveler, the inventor, they remain in the shadows unlived. Regret serves no purpose now. It is a heavy stone, and enough heavy things have been carried. This is not about blame. It is simply about seeing the narrative clearly. The work was done. The duty was fulfilled. It worked. Bills were paid. Life moved forward. Security was purchased. And only much later, in the quiet of a Tuesday afternoon, did the actual cost become clear.